Have you ever noticed how people only realize your worth once you stop giving them access to it? They take your presence for granted, assuming you'll always be there, always trying, always proving. But what happens when you stop? When you no longer seek their validation, when you withdraw your energy, something shifts. It's like a lighthouse standing tall in the storm. Ships navigate by its light every night, but no one stops to appreciate its presence until the light goes out. Suddenly they're lost, desperate for the guidance they once ignored. Or think of a warrior who never boasts, never begs for recognition. Yet, when the true battle comes, all eyes turn to him for strength. That's the power of silent worth. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Your value is not in convincing others, it's in standing firm, refining yourself, and letting absence speak louder than words." So, how do you make them feel your loss without begging, proving, or saying a word? Stay until the end, because the last insight will change everything. Number 1. Let their indifference teach you who they are. Few things sting more than being overlooked by a friend who never truly values your presence, a partner who takes you for granted, or a workplace that ignores your efforts. When someone disregards your worth, it's easy to internalize the pain, to wonder if maybe you're not enough. But here's the truth. Their indifference is not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of theirs. People reveal their priorities through actions, not words. If someone consistently ignores you, dismisses your contributions, or only acknowledges you when it benefits them, take it as a lesson, not an insult. The worst thing you can do is chase their approval or try to prove your worth to them. The moment you do, you hand them power over how you see yourself. And that's exactly what Stoic wisdom warns us against. Epictetus once said, "He who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone." Think about that. If someone fails to recognize your worth, it's not because you lack value, it's because they lack the ability to appreciate it. Some people are too self-absorbed, too emotionally immature, or too caught up in their own insecurities to see the worth of those around them. And the more you try to force them to recognize it, the more they pull away. Let me tell you about someone I know. Let's call him Ethan. He was always the one making the effort in his friendships. He planned the meetups, checked in on people, and made sure everyone felt included. But over time, he started to notice a pattern. If he didn't reach out first, nothing happened. So he decided to do a small experiment. He stopped texting first, stopped initiating plans, and then silence. Days turned into weeks. No one reached out. At first, it hurt. But then he had a realization. He had been forcing connections that weren't meant for him. Their indifference was teaching him something valuable, not about himself, but about them. The people he thought cared were merely keeping him around out of convenience, not out of genuine appreciation. And in that moment, he stopped chasing, stopped proving, stopped needing to be seen. Instead, he redirected his energy toward people and pursuits that truly valued him. So how do you handle people who ignore your worth? The answer lies in 3 simple shifts. First, stop seeking validation. The more you chase, the less they respect you. Second, pay attention to their actions. If someone consistently shows you they don't value you, believe them. And finally, shift your energy elsewhere. Pour your time into relationships, passions, and environments that uplift you, not those that drain you. At the end of the day, your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to see it. The right people will recognize your worth effortlessly, and as for those who don't, let them regret losing you, not through words, not through proving, but by thriving in your absence. Number 2, stop seeking their validation. One of the biggest mistakes you can make when someone ignores your worth is to chase their approval. It's natural to want recognition, to want people to see your value. But here's the paradox. The more you seek their validation, the less valuable you appear. Every time you explain yourself, overextend, or fight for their attention, you send an unspoken message that your worth depends on their recognition, and nothing diminishes your value faster than that. People ignore your worth because they can. They've learned that no matter how much they disregard you, you'll still be there, waiting, hoping, proving. As long as they have that power over you, they have no reason to appreciate you. But the moment you withdraw your attention, the balance shifts. Suddenly, they're the ones left wondering, and that's when they start noticing your absence. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Think about that. When you crave validation, you put yourself in a position of weakness. You become emotionally dependent on how others see you. But the moment you stop chasing approval, you reclaim your power. You realize that you were never the one who needed them. They were the ones who should have valued you all along. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Claire. Claire was the kind of person who always went the extra mile. Whether in friendships, family relationships, or even at work, she was constantly seeking approval. She overextended herself, over-apologized, and tried to be everything for everyone, hoping they'd finally see her worth. But instead of earning more respect, she felt increasingly invisible. One day, she had enough. She decided to stop proving herself. She stopped reaching out first, stopped justifying her actions, stopped bending over backward for people who never met her halfway. And then something interesting happened. The same people who once ignored her began to notice her absence. The friend who never responded to her messages suddenly checked in. The colleagues who overlooked her contributions started asking for her input. The shift was undeniable. That's the key. People only truly value what they feel they might lose. When Claire stopped chasing, the balance changed. Suddenly, those who had taken her for granted were the ones making the effort. So how do you stop seeking validation? First, recognize that your worth isn't tied to their approval. You don't need their recognition to be valuable. Second, create distance. Pull back your attention, stop proving yourself, and observe who notices your absence. And finally, redirect your focus inward. Instead of looking outward for validation, cultivate self-respect and inner confidence. At the end of the day, the most powerful way to make someone regret ignoring your worth is to show them you don't need them. When you stop seeking their approval, you become someone they can no longer ignore. And that's when they start chasing you. Number 3, refuse to play their game. Some people don't ignore you because they don't care. They ignore you to see how much you'll tolerate. It's not always disinterest. Sometimes it's a calculated move. They pull away to test your reaction. Will you chase? Will you beg for their attention? Will you break under the silence? The more you react, the more power you give them. And that's exactly what they want. They want to see if you'll overthink, if you'll start questioning yourself, if you'll scramble to fix something that was never broken in the first place. And the moment you take the bait, you confirm what they suspected. You care more. And once they have that confirmation, they lose even more respect for you. This is why the most powerful response is to give them nothing. No anger, no explanations, no desperate attempts to fix things. Indifference is stronger than any emotional outburst, because when you stop playing their game, they lose all the control they thought they had over you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What does that mean in this context? It means that if someone is trying to manipulate you, the worst thing you can do is fall into their trap. If they are ignoring you to provoke a reaction, don't give them one. If they thrive on seeing you frustrated, remain calm. Instead of sinking to their level, rise above it. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Adam. Adam was dating someone who had a habit of going silent every time they had a disagreement. At first, he assumed they just needed space. But then, he started noticing a pattern. Every time things didn't go their way, they'd withdraw, not to solve the problem, but to see if he'd come running. It was never about resolution, it was about control. One day, Adam decided he had enough. Instead of panicking, instead of sending multiple messages, he simply mirrored their silence. He focused on himself. And guess what? They came back, confused, wondering why he wasn't reacting anymore. That's the key. People who use silence as a manipulation tactic only have power if you give it to them. The moment you stop seeking answers, stop chasing, stop proving yourself, you take that power back. So how do you handle this? First, recognize the game. If someone constantly ignores you and then reappears when it's convenient for them, it's not care, it's control. Second, stop reacting. Don't chase, don't explain, don't engage. And finally, shift your focus inward. Use their silence as an opportunity to build yourself up, not break yourself down. At the end of the day, people who ignore you to test your reaction are looking for proof that you need them. The best way to make them regret it, show them you don't. When they realize they can no longer control you, they'll be the ones left wondering what happened. Number 4, elevate yourself in silence. The most powerful way to respond when someone ignores your worth isn't with words, it's with action. When someone dismisses you, takes you for granted, or treats you with indifference, your instinct might be to confront them, demand answers, or prove them wrong. But the truth is, the best response is not to explain your worth, it's to embody it. Instead of wasting energy trying to make them see your value, focus on elevating yourself in silence. While they overlook you, build yourself, strengthen your mind, refine your skills, improve your health, and sharpen your discipline. Keep growing until your progress speaks louder than their indifference, because nothing unsettles people more than realizing that the person they once ignored is now thriving without them. Here's the reality. Success is the best response. When you level up in silence, the power dynamic shifts. The people who once dismissed you will eventually notice, but by then, their recognition won't matter. You won't need their validation, because your progress will have already proven your worth. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." What does that mean? It means that instead of trying to convince others of your value, you make it undeniable. You let your actions, your discipline, and your growth do all the talking. When you embody success, you don't have to chase validation. It naturally follows. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Ryan. Ryan was constantly overlooked at work. No matter how hard he worked, his contributions went unnoticed. He could have complained, demanded recognition, or tried to prove himself to those who ignored him. But instead, he chose a different path. He focused on self-improvement. He learned new skills, expanded his expertise, and worked in silence. While others wasted time playing office politics, he invested in himself. And then, months later, an opportunity arose. Suddenly, the same people who once ignored him were forced to acknowledge his value. But by then, it no longer mattered, because Ryan had already outgrown that environment. He had elevated himself so much that he now had better opportunities elsewhere. That's the lesson. When you stop chasing validation and start investing in yourself, you change the game. So how do you elevate yourself in silence? First, shift your focus inward. Stop trying to prove your worth to them. Prove it to yourself. Second, set clear goals. Define what success looks like for you and pursue it relentlessly. And finally, let your growth speak for itself. When you rise above their indifference, they will eventually notice, but by then, you won't need them to. At the end of the day, the best way to make someone regret ignoring your worth is to become someone they can't ignore. Keep evolving, keep growing, and let your success be the only response they ever get. Number 5. Master your emotions. One of the most powerful skills you can develop is emotional control. When someone ignores you, dismisses you, or takes you for granted, the natural reaction is frustration, anger, or sadness. You may feel the urge to prove yourself, demand an explanation, or show them what they're missing. But here's the truth. The more you react emotionally, the more power you give them. People who neglect or ignore you often do so because they want to see how much control they have. They test your emotions, waiting to see if you'll break, overreact, or try to win them back. But the most unsettling thing you can do: remain completely indifferent. When they realize their silence doesn't shake you, when they see that you're unbothered by their games, they start losing their grip. And that's when the power shifts. Nothing makes someone more uncomfortable than your total indifference to their neglect. They expect you to chase, to get angry, to try harder. But when you respond with calmness, confidence, and emotional mastery, they no longer have the upper hand. Suddenly, they start wondering why you're not reacting. And that uncertainty, that's what makes them regret underestimating you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." What does this mean? It means that being ignored doesn't hurt because of the act itself. It hurts because of how you interpret it. If you see it as rejection, it stings. But if you see it as proof of their own shortcomings, it loses all power over you. The moment you realize that someone ignoring you says more about them than it does about you, you take back control. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Sarah. She had a friend who only stayed in touch when it was convenient for them. If Sarah didn't reach out first, days or even weeks would go by without a word. At first, she let it get to her. She felt unimportant, questioning whether she was the problem. But then she made a shift. Instead of reacting emotionally, she simply stopped trying. She redirected her energy elsewhere, focusing on the relationships and activities that fulfilled her. And then something interesting happened. The same friend who once ignored her started noticing. They reached out, wondering why Sarah wasn't chasing anymore. But by that point, she had already moved on. She had mastered her emotions, and their behavior no longer had any control over her. So how do you master your emotions in these situations? First, pause before reacting. Don't let someone's actions dictate your emotional state. Second, change the narrative. See their neglect as a reflection of them, not you. And finally, focus on yourself. Use that energy to grow, to improve, to thrive, not to seek their approval. At the end of the day, emotional mastery is the ultimate power move. When you remain calm, collected, and unbothered, those who once ignored you will be left wondering how they ever thought they had power over you. And that's when the regret sets in. Number 6. Walk away with confidence. The most powerful move you can make when someone ignores your worth is not to argue, not to prove, not to chase, but to walk away with confidence. It's easy to think that if you try harder, if you're more patient, if you just wait long enough, they'll finally see your value. But here's the truth. The moment you stop caring is the moment they start wondering. When you walk away, without anger, without resentment, without trying to convince them of your worth, you send a powerful message. You are not dependent on their recognition to feel valuable, and that kind of self-assurance is rare. Most people cling, beg, or try to prove themselves when they're ignored. But those who walk away with confidence, they are the ones who are truly free. Here's the reality. Leaving without resentment isn't about proving a point or getting revenge. It's about choosing yourself. When you detach from people who fail to see your worth, you reclaim your energy. And ironically, that's often when they start to notice what they lost, because people only value what they no longer have easy access to. Marcus Aurelius once said, "A wise man is content with himself and values his own approval above that of others." What does that mean? It means that real confidence doesn't come from being acknowledged by others. It comes from within. A truly strong person doesn't beg for validation. They don't chase after those who overlook them. They know their worth, and if someone fails to see it, they simply move on. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Emma. Emma was in a relationship where she always felt like she had to prove herself. No matter how much love, time, or effort she gave, she was never truly appreciated. She tried talking about it. She tried being more understanding. She even tried pulling back to see if that would make a difference. But nothing changed. Then one day, she made a decision. Instead of explaining her worth, instead of waiting for things to improve, she simply walked away. No arguments, no dramatic exit, just quiet confidence. And guess what? Months later, the same person who ignored her suddenly started reaching out, wondering why she had stopped trying. But by then, Emma had already moved forward. She had shifted her focus to herself, her growth, and the people who actually valued her. So how do you walk away with confidence? First, detach emotionally. Don't let their indifference dictate how you feel about yourself. Second, don't seek closure from them. Find it within yourself. You don't need their recognition to validate your worth. And finally, shift your energy towards self-growth. The best revenge isn't anger, it's thriving without them. At the end of the day, when you stop chasing those who ignore you, you make room for those who truly appreciate you. Walk away with confidence and watch how quickly they start wondering why they ever took you for granted. Number 7. Expand your circle of influence. One of the most powerful ways to shift your energy when someone ignores your worth is to expand your world. Too often, people waste time chasing the approval of those who don't appreciate them. They obsess over why they're being ignored, what they did wrong, and how they can prove their value. But here's the truth. The right people will recognize your worth effortlessly, without needing reminders. When someone fails to see your value, don't shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Instead, expand your circle. There are people out there who will naturally appreciate your intelligence, kindness, and ambition, but you'll never find them if you're too busy clinging to those who don't. The moment you stop seeking validation from the wrong people and start surrounding yourself with those who uplift you, everything changes. Seneca once said, Associate with those who will make a better man of you. The Stoics understood that your worth isn't determined by those who overlook you. It's affirmed by those who recognize your potential and challenge you to grow. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Jake. For years, he felt like an outsider in his friend group. No matter how much he tried to fit in, he was always an afterthought. One day, he made a shift. Instead of forcing connections, he sought out new environments. He joined professional circles, attended events, and connected with people who truly valued his presence. And suddenly, everything changed. Instead of chasing friendships, he found himself surrounded by people who respected him effortlessly. So, how do you expand your circle of influence? First, stop fixating on those who don't appreciate you. If they can't see your worth, that's their loss. Second, seek out people who align with your values. Join new communities, surround yourself with ambitious individuals, and place yourself in environments where you can grow. And finally, remember, you don't need everyone to like you, just the right people. At the end of the day, the most powerful decision you can make is choosing where to direct your energy instead of chasing those who overlook you. Focus on those who genuinely value you. Your worth was never meant to be proven to the wrong people. It was meant to be recognized effortlessly by the right ones. The moment you stop seeking validation from those who ignore you, everything shifts. You no longer waste time trying to convince them of your value. Instead, you invest in yourself and those who uplift you. And ironically, that's when people start to notice what they once took for granted. But by then, their recognition won't even matter anymore. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, being ignored only hurts if you allow it to define you. But when you shift your perspective, when you see their indifference as a reflection of them, not you, you take back your power. If this message resonated with you, comment, "I choose growth," below. And if you found value in this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support means a lot and helps bring more insights like this your way. Keep growing, keep evolving, and trust that the right people will always recognize your worth. See you in the next video.